You had zero PM experience before coming to United States, yet you got 3 internship offer within 3 months of landing in United States.
I tried all the methods like career fairs, networks, referrals, everything. But mainly, I think what worked for me were two things. One is
To me, what is interesting is that you got callback for TPM roles or PM roles which you didn't have experience. So there is some way you were able to pivot your profile. How did you do that? You said you applied and you didn't get calls until November.
Yeah.
So you get a lot of rejections. So you're like waking up with rejections. So how
Yeah.
do you like keep up mentally to keep going?
Confluent was the toughest interview that I have given, because the first step was not an interview. The first step was a
So what is like typical salary range people make?
so for internship in Austin, in Texas area, would be like 40 plus
Per hour.
per hour.
Yeah, I've heard people making $55, $60
Yeah,
per hour.
yeah,
as
yeah.
well. Meet Samhita, who is pursuing her master's in engineering management from Purdue University. She landed multiple internships and co-ops in product and program management within few months of landing in United States, despite the fact that she didn't have any product experience before coming to United States. In this podcast, she shares the real strategies of how to really pivot your career in product and program management, and also how to build your profile that gets interview calls and co-op interviews. But above all, she also shares the harsh reality of being an international student, the emotional roller coaster that everyone faces but no one is sharing on Instagram. What do you think worked in your situation?
Um, I think it's like one simple answer what worked the best for me, which is work experience. Although I didn't have like formal PM experience, I think work experience essentially helped me out in two ways. One is industry specificity. Like I worked at Cisco, which is the world's largest networking company, right? So the product space that I worked in essentially helped me with the AMD callback, because not many people are working in that space. So that is one way how I was led back to my work experience. Second is any experience that you want to like cater to, either could be technical program management or product management, or could be in any other field. In a company, especially in an MNC, right, there'll be so many people you can interact with, so many ways through your journey you would have gotten that experience, right? Like for example, while preparing for my interviews, I had reached out to the TPM of my team in Cisco. And in fact, I also reached out to somebody who wasn't even in my team. I reached out to her. I used to be part of the Toastmasters Club. So she was a business analyst. I wanted to know more about that. See how, my work at Cisco was probably relating to that. So there's a lot of things you can map to when you have work experience. And I feel like that is a huge playground that I could play around with, talk about during my internship. So that was, I think, the major context setting thing for me.
Love it. Maybe we can break down. You had 3 internships so far. AMD, Tesla, Confluent. Were all the same roles, or like what were the roles, and like what did you do in that roles?
So at AMD, my role was an NPI product intern. Actually, before I, maybe go about my roles at AMD, at Cisco, I worked for 2 years as a software engineer. And in the middle, I got to work with, certain ASIC NPI products that were in the making that time. So that was an experience, like I mentioned, that I was able to track back to AMD. So particularly my role and what my team did in AMD was cost optimizations and yield optimizations for wafer sort workflows. And my specific role was answering questions like, hey, what are the potential areas we could cut down costs? What are the bottlenecks in the workflow system? Or what are the IP plugins that we can optimize here? So answering questions like that. And in fact, my work also had some hands-on coding experience where I wrote 2 modules for the workflow that we were trying to optimize. So yeah, the idea was, how can we build sort of like a scalable infrastructure, because there's probably an up and coming product line every 2 years, right? So it's not just building something that works for this, something that's also integrable for future products.
And then Confluent and Tesla?
Both of these were technical program management, but both were different in its own way, because Confluent, I was in the cloud infrastructure team, and Confluent is a software as a service company.
What do they do? Like what do they offer?
So you know Apache Kafka?
Yeah.
So they manage Apache Kafka for multiple companies. And in fact, the founders of Confluent are the original founders of Apache Kafka. So I actually loved my internship at Confluent, and there were the people, the culture, and even the kind of work that that I was able to get there was something that I really enjoyed. So as I was mentioning, I was in the cloud services team, right? So here, for an intern, they usually gave multiple projects to see, how I cope up with different projects and how I can handle all those together. But essentially, maybe my main project would be Confluent does continuous planning as well as quarterly planning. So optimizing the planning there. And so my main project was also optimizing the Kafka on-call sessions. So that's what I was working on. And apart from this, I also did some analytics for some of the engineering teams. Also, again, did a little bit of scripting and automation writing there. So although you're a TPM, the technical part of it is still like predominant. I think a lot of times when we look at these roles from outside, we think that
it's gonna be like just meetings and coordination.
Yeah, that's what it's a very high level thing, which is why I'm trying to give a little bit more technical detail of probably what I was trying to do. Because
and with Tesla is same.
With Tesla, again, I was again in the NPI space. So
What's
I think
an NPI? Sorry.
New product introduction.
Okay.
So new product introduction is an interesting space to be, because this is something that's new for the company. So even if the company has a specific structure of how they're doing things, right? It's something that within the company you kind of break it because you're trying to sort of do something different. And with Tesla's actually is even more different, because it's R&D. At least in Cisco and in AMD, these are products that were set for release.
It was making revenues or...
Yeah, exactly. But that's not the case in Tesla. So here I'm responsible for the end-to-end management of a product through different phases. So I'm the main POC for anything that happens in this product. And also I can give a red or green light for any main decisions that does happen here. And again, there's a lot of moving parts. It's chaotic. NPI, because...
Wait, so in your internship, you get to work with like people who are working full time?
Yes.
Oh.
All the internships, I worked just with people with full time. I didn't in fact work with any other intern. And yeah, but I think compared to my AMD and Confluent experience, Tesla is a bit different, because in AMD and Confluent, I would say as an intern given a specific project or something where sort of like a test to see, how does this person do. Whereas in Tesla, it's like, it's sort of like doing an FTE role just for an internship duration.
We're going to come back to how you got those offers and probably do masterclass on resume and all of this. But before we get there, did you always knew, like, because you were a software engineer in Cisco, like, did you know that this is where I want to be, like TPM, PM roles? So how did that happen?
Actually, like, I didn't know, even like I would say, like, for engineering, people know kind of, from the starting what they want to do. I wasn't one. Even in engineering, I took a lot of different classes to figure out what my niche would be. And in Cisco, when I joined, as soon as I joined, I actually decided to do my master's. But fortunately, like, I was like, hey, you want to do master's? Okay, but what do you want to do master's in, right? Again, same like undergrad, this is going to be completely different. It's not like in India, everybody does engineering, computer science. So it's not going to be the standard Indian student package sort of thing. It's a big deal, and I'm glad I did that because I figured out through 2 years of journey into what area that I wanted to be in. Like, say, when you say management, it could be vast. In fact, when I was doing my master's research, so many, like when I was talking to MEM students and all, I even heard of these new terms, supply chain management, all these new areas. And when I learned more about their job roles and mapped what I like about my work at Cisco, that's when I narrowed down on program management and product management. And I also, like, I had a couple of friends in that field, and I spoke to them and I was like, hey, you know what, this sounds like something I want to do. And that's how I decided on it.
And why Purdue then? Why Purdue MEM? And like, how did MEM came into the picture?
So I kind of reverse engineered it. I was like, where do I see myself working? What do I see myself working as? I wanted to be in the program or product management space. If not that, something to do with data, either business analytics or data science. And if not that, I would still be an engineering in tech. So I was passionate about this domain and definitely wanted to stick here. I didn't want to venture outside. That's where my strengths are. So when I reverse engineered, two main courses that came up, one was MEM and one was MIS or MSIM. So based off that, I applied, and I also looked into, what are the famous colleges for it. I think for MEM, there's something called as MEMPC, which is sort of like a consortium of all the good, reputed MEM colleges. And again, other factors are like, hey, okay, this college is reputed, but how are the students actually doing, right? What are their outcomes looking like? And of course, ROI. I mean, am I going to get the value for the amount of money I'm shelling, right?
Yeah.
So based off that, I narrowed down on 2 MEM colleges and 6 management information system colleges.
Yeah. And then, like, what convinced you that Purdue is the...
So out of the admits that I had gotten, I think the decision that I wanted to make was amongst Purdue, Duke, CMU, and University of Washington. Because I think
Wow, that is tough competition.
So I think, like, for product management and for somebody who's from computer science, in fact, Purdue, the other 3 are like very heavy on tech, but Purdue was not. But I'll go over the pros of why Purdue was kind of something that I definitely wanted to go with. One is it was the only college that was offering
Co-ops.
a 3-sem co-op, right? And not just that, when I looked at the outcomes of the students also, right, they were doing, I don't know if it was a college or if it was how good the cohort in itself was doing. And actually, this research I did before applying itself, because one of my classmates was at that point in Purdue MEM. So I saw that, these students are doing well. But at the time when I actually got the offer, the only inhibition that I had was that it did seem more of an industrial focused school. So I don't know how I might feel in such kind of a place. But when I spoke and reached out to people on LinkedIn, they only had good things to say about Purdue. They, in fact, said that a lot of ways, either how the department helped, and not just that, but also how, because they were able to sort of get their experiences, that's something a lot more valuable versus, like maybe somebody is saying that, hey, I was kind of all on my own. So that's something that really helped me nail down my decision. And I think one unbeatable thing is ROI. I mean,
you're gonna graduate debt free.
Yeah, so, and the rent, everything. And honestly, I feel cities you'll end up living anytime. It's a beautiful campus. I like it.
Yeah. And you also get personal bedroom. Did you have personal bedroom?
Yeah, I had personal bedroom, and actually mine was fully furnished, and I was living very nicely versus my friends in Boston and all the cities were paying double my rent.
Like one area of the
yeah. So I was that was nice. And also like initial journey was also comfortable because my roommate in fact was my friend from my undergrad itself. So
yeah.
so that was a
And
comfortable
a lot of
journey.
time, I've talked to multiple Purdue students, and a lot of time they tell me the interview process is where they get convinced even more. So what does Eric does, like some form of magnetic? I feel like.
So actually, like I had very well.
Also, for people who don't know, Eric is the director
Okay, yeah.
of MEM.
So honestly, like I knew my friend who was in Purdue at that point of time. She vouched heavily. Like she was the one who spoke so much about so highly of the management. I think one more important point that I missed out is the industry connections that Purdue has. So all of these she had already mentioned. So I knew all of this, and I knew every stage of, because she was a friend, not a LinkedIn connection. So she told me A to Z detail, and I think I was also particularly targeting because it seemed like the best of everything. So even during my interview with Eric, I felt like it was more of me convincing him, saying that take me rather than him convincing me, because I really wanted to join Purdue. Even before the interview or anything, I kind of wanted to join Purdue. Yeah.
Okay, so you decided Purdue MEM. You knew kind of product space, tech space you wanted to be in. Then you landed in United States. Again, you didn't have any formal PM experience.
Yeah.
Yet you started to get interview calls. How did it happen? Like what happened first? Like did AMD happen first? Tesla happen first? Confluent happen first? Timeline wise, like, and then how did you start getting interview calls?
Okay. So I feel in the interview process, right, the biggest bottleneck is getting the call.
Yeah.
I feel like at a point initially, I'll be honest, I wasn't one of those students who came with a callback. My first callback was okay. One callback I'd gotten with a career fair, but I would say like the first proper callback was maybe end of November, which in a timeline is kind of late for spring at least. So I was really
November
faking
is
that.
late, so you landed in August. So August, September,
For
October.
spring, right? So for spring, November is late.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
So again, for people who don't know, because we are assuming they know that Purdue allows you to have a spring co-op. So even you've just done first semester, you can start the co-op in spring. So you are saying that for spring, that's too late. So when do people generally get?
So, like I mentioned, when at least for my cohort, oh god, people started getting callbacks in September, October. Good number of people got callbacks, and I think it was at this point I was just like, there's a lot of freak out. There's a lot that I think emotional turmoil that goes on, but I think my callback took its time. But the thing is, end of the day is you can get 100 callbacks, but you need just one job.
Yeah.
You can't work it. So anyways, coming back to the question that you asked is I think the bottleneck, like I mentioned, is the resume process. So one of the senior actually gave this advice, saying that if you're diligently applying for a month and you aren't getting any callbacks, go back and reevaluate your resume, because that's something you have to. And actually, the ease with which I got my fall callbacks were a lot more smoother, because I think I knew how to put my experience in resume, and also of course I did have some US experience. That ease did not come during my spring and summer internships. So mainly my callbacks, I tried all the methods like career fairs, networks, referrals, everything. But mainly I think what worked for me were two things. One is cold applications, not a fancy answer, but I mean it works. People are probably looking for a hack, saying that hundreds of thousands of applications are put in, but yes, I mean I have most of my callbacks are from cold applications. Well, I mean, you put your resume out there is definitely somebody. And second is through a direct referral. So when I say a direct referral is I've also tried the refer a friend option, right? To whoever my friend's friend of a friend, I used to pick them and ask, but I felt personally that's something that didn't help. But in terms of referral, what helped me out is somebody in a tight knit network. Again, not a fancy LinkedIn connection, just somebody like friend, or could be family member, could be a friend of a family member, anything, who can vouch for your skills and would go that 1 mile extra, right? Because what this person has to do is connect you with that recruiter, or tell that recruiter, hey, this is a great candidate, right? So that's something only somebody who knows you well and can vouch for you will do that. So
because they're also putting their reputation online.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's not with networking, it's not about how many connections you make, but it's literally in the essence of your roommate is probably also a great network. People from your old company, I reached out to them. So all these kind of interactions, you never know when it might turn into an opportunity. And that's something that worked for me, saying that, hey, I'm interested in a role in this team. Do you think you can send my resume to the recruiter? And if somebody can vouch for you and they'll do it, if the person likes you, then they'll pick your resume, right? Because like I said, the toughest part is to get your resume in front of the eyes of the recruiter. I mean, after that, it's everything's up to them, but yeah.
So what you're saying, like the two things that work for you is, one is referral, direct referral,
Yes.
someone who vouch for you, and one is resume.
Yes.
And cold application, I know cold application, like a lot of people do get offers, I mean interview calls from cold application. But to me, what is interesting is that you got callbacks for TPM roles or PM roles which you didn't have experience. So there is some way you were able to pivot your profile. How did you do that?
So I think first definitive advice is, when you hear people getting callbacks, right, it's very natural for you to think that what is this person doing, right? Let me do something. Definitely take advice, but take everybody's advice with a grain of salt, because the first mistake that I did is, I mentioned a lot of people were getting callbacks in September or October. So when I reached out to them, kind of maybe tried to match my skill set to them, added those buzzwords, been there, done all of that. But what happens is, if you notice, almost nobody will have the same callback pattern. So very much stick to your strengths, the field that you have worked in. Because the idea is not that, oh, if this person's getting a callback, I have to get the same callback, because that's kind of not how it works. So the idea is to two ways. One is find candidates who've had a similar profile, even like in the same technical space as you. And second is, have these people landed in roles that you want to eventually land in. So then see what is that. So be very selective about whose footsteps you're following and stuff. So like an example, if I had to give, like for my AMD internship, right? A lot of times we also like really focus by putting the keywords of this thing in our resume and stuff. For me, AMD was, I would say, was a pleasant surprise, because I was
didn't customize your resume.
Yeah, I didn't customize my resume for them. But after I worked in the job, I understood why my resume was picked, because I worked with a similar product, something that I would have mentioned in my resume, not knowing that they have worked on that similar product. So it's kind of like it just happened to be a fit.
Your profile was very relevant for that role.
Yes. So that's something. So this is an industry relevance that I got, although I didn't have a
like a role
relevance. So because from here I got some amount of role relevance, from there the other callbacks followed. So that's how it helps, right? So like say now I'm in the energy industry, something that I've never been before. That something might lead to something else. So you never know how the chain will carry.
And so in Confluent and Tesla, your resume basically worked. And did you customize your resume, or did you still not customize it?
So I think after a point, I stopped customizing my resume. I think around December was when I was, I think, very, very hardcore applying. After December, I think I slowly for fall started applications sometime maybe around summer. But for this, right, I didn't look at a job description and try to put those keywords, because I mean they're not dumb. They can figure out. In fact, a lot of times that might come off as a red flag that hey, how are they having the exact match? That's not possible. So the idea is maybe put a list of the skill set that you think is what they require, and map it in a way where they feel like, hey, this is a good candidate that we want to have, sort of a situation.
Did you filter out yourself some of the roles that I don't think I'm going to be good fit, so I should not apply, or you still applied?
So all of this will depend on how you're doing at that point in time. In fall 2024, not very happy to admit that I have applied to every single role. I've applied to roles like, I remember this one day I looked at the role and I thought that, do you even want to work here? And I definitely didn't want to work there, because you feel like, hey, I've worked with some experience, some relevance or something, right? It's just I'm not going to do anything and everything that comes in my way. But it's just in that situation you are in, there's a lot of FOMO. So your brain will act differently then. But I think I became extremely selective for my fall internship process, where I was like, because at that point, I also got a little more confident than maybe I was at my springtime. And I felt like I wanted to do something that's relevant to my journey. And because I already did an internship, I wasn't in an absolute compulsion that I have to do something and anything that comes my way.
So in your fall semester, in the first semester, you had 2 offers.
So I had one offer for spring and I had one offer for
summer. Yeah. And then Tesla happened later.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. What was the role of Purdue? Like, did having Purdue in the resume or department help? Like, so I'm trying to dissect this. Is it Purdue, or is it you, or is it the combination of both?
So in terms of, I think for Tesla, mainly, I think definitely Purdue did help, because
you said you had 3 callbacks.
Yeah, from Tesla. And although I again do not come from the energy background, right? Was because maybe they say that she has the skills, yes, and she's from Purdue, definitely, because although there isn't a direct relevance directly, but maybe because you're from Purdue, they tend to pick. And the only reason I say this is because there are a lot of Purdue students interning at Tesla. So I feel like Purdue definitely has something
there's a
to
Tesla
do.
day. There's a bunch of alumni and students working at Tesla.
Yeah. So that's the reason. And as such, like, maybe not direct helping, but I feel it's very helpful in a way where the college in itself just has so much energy in terms of, like, I mean, it you join and from day 0 you're kind of in the rat race again. So it's the students, and
so the pressure feels like, okay, if everyone is getting calls, I should be.
So not necessarily like peer pressure, but more in the sense of like how energetic and like how
environment, like not necessarily pressure, but like
that not that pressure was not there, but I feel like especially like, imagine that so many people come to US for masters, right? But the kind of dedication and this thing that you start to put in from day one, I feel like just the quality of students also, like everybody was super, super ambitious. I feel like, and that could be one of the reasons. And one of the reasons is also like, unlike our undergraduate where you join and you don't have to worry about a job until 4 years.
last semester.
So that could also be an added reason. And I also think it's because it's MEM, a lot of people do come with work experience. So it's people who know their shit. So that's something that, and there's a lot you can learn, a lot of peer learning that happens as well. So it's.
But I also imagine there's like a whole, like you were saying, you land and you start applying.
Yeah.
There's an emotional energy being spent, the emotional state of like job hunting. How did you cope up? Like, because I'm assuming you said you applied and you didn't get calls until November.
Yeah.
So you get a lot of rejection. So you're like waking up with rejections. So how do you like keep up mentally to keep going?
So I actually like recently in Austin, I met up with a friend after like very long time. She was also interning there. And she told, in first sem, people used to see you in Cranot. You used to be with a hoodie and you used to just be by yourself. They used to be afraid to come and say hi to you. So I used to just keep to myself, avoid like maybe talking to a lot of people because I felt like it just overwhelmed me. In fact, like my roommate also was like, oh God, can you please not spend another weekend just sitting at home and like not doing so. I don't think I took it like very well, but maybe it's like here and there, right? Like for how long will you just keep staying at home and with the four
And you were
walls?
doing that because like you were emotionally feeling like I'm not, like maybe I'm not meant for it.
I definitely had. So the thing is, it's not that when I was sitting at home, it was like 24/7. I've put 100 job applications today. That wasn't always the case. It was also a lot of sulking, like, this is not happening, calling, whining. Yeah, I'm a huge whiner if something doesn't work out. I'm not.
I'm glad you're sharing this perspective because, like, I know like Purdue students, I've talked to many, and I don't want to glorify it, but because there's a behind the scene of like you, like you said, sulking in the room, sitting in the room, and not going out because I was facing these rejections.
And actually, like a lot of students are like very mentally prepped for it, and I think maybe from undergraduate they were like that. The thing is, I wasn't that kind of a person. I was a very chill, easygoing, and I think up until masters things were also very easily handed to me. Campus placement, it is very smooth journey. It's like here, because in campus placement they are coming, you're giving exams, you are giving interviews every week with zero work experience. Here you have 2 years work experience, you're getting rejected left, right and center. Everybody around you, sometimes in fact actually a lot of people with no work experience got callbacks first. And you're exposed to so many other industries. I didn't even know engineering management is a very umbrella degree. People from chemical engineering, mechanical, so many fields. There was so much going on. It's difficult to not get in your head. Some people do a good job. I think my roommate did a good job. She used to be kept her composure. She did well. So
so then how did you pick back up yourself? Like, okay, bhai,
I got offer. That's how I picked myself back up.
Okay, so let me ask you a different way. If you now knowing this, if you were to start your master's journey again, emotionally, how will you prepare, or how should people prepare?
I think one thing is kind of like keep my confidence, right? Because like I said, in Purdue, people from different degrees, people who are very different. Usually in the classroom that I was used to, all of us did computer science. All of us were competing for the same jobs. Here, it had so happened that when people were getting callbacks, it so happened that first all the industrial people were getting callbacks. So I remember once my friend and I, we were like, hey, do you think we should sit and apply for these jobs? We did that. Embarrassing enough to admit that I tried to put in buzzwords like lean project management and all of that. I did that because
you thought that, okay, maybe companies are hiring for these specific, so I should go there.
Exactly. But in reality, what was happening is it just happened that everybody around me were from these backgrounds. And these were the people that, these were the industries that were hiring. And everybody here, it's like 80% of the cohort was not from tech. So if these are the ones getting callbacks, you think that the jobs are only there in those areas, right? So you kind of like deviate very much to what your original goal was. I came to do product management, program management. I was very specific. I in fact didn't mind going back into software engineering. That's how like I had
Your
an
thought
idea.
process,
Yeah. So, but I mean, it happens, right? Like you're like, hey, somebody maybe without job experience is also getting. Should I go out there and venture out a different field? Am I missing something out? Sort of thing happens. But maybe I wouldn't waste my time doing all that and just keep confidence in the expertise that I bring with myself, right? I have to accept the fact that, hey, I've done my bachelor's in computer science. This is the field that I am going to continue in. And this is what, not settling basically. And just, it will come. You will eventually get something. So don't get affected by other people, is an advice I would give myself. Would I have like reacted in a different way? I don't know, because it's there in your face. So yeah.
Um, and then how important was it to have, did you have like a strong tribe that helped you pick up in this journey? Because having like a friends and roommates is probably more important in this journey. I mean, again, it depends. Some people do have roommate drama as well. So I hope you didn't have one.
No, because my roommate was one of my best friends from undergrad. So like we came together, so that was chill.
So was it helpful to have such?
Yeah, it was definitely helpful because you don't have to deal with additional things in your life.
You drank my milk and you ate my banana.
Yeah, and when I used to speak about any college related or career related things, slowly I started speaking only to people whom I have similar experiences with, because that's an echo chamber I wanted to create. I wanted to hear where the opportunities in tech are, where the opportunities in product management are, get their advice, saying that, hey, remember, this is the kind of challenge we had, say like, in engineering. How do you think I can put this down as a good experience? So these are people who will give me relevant advice also. So that's something I started to do. And I think, maybe that's something that helped also.
Okay. I also want to talk about time management, because did you have on-campus job?
Yeah, I did an on-campus for 10 hours.
So you had on-campus job, you were job, like internship hunting, you had full-time student, and then obviously internship.
Yeah.
How the heck did you manage the time?
So, I mean, actually everything I definitely didn't do according to plan, because I wanted to take a lot more completely computer science focused courses, but I think that would have become very, very hectic. So I took more project based courses where I probably don't have to sit for hours and prep for an exam. And also I took lesser number of credits also in my first sem. I didn't take like 15 or 18 credits just to finish it off. And that is one thing. Part-time also is just one part-time also, like I did it because I felt like I kind of also used to enjoy it, right? I used to play this, I used to work at a cafe, and when I was young, I used to play this game of how you just kind of collect money and like some so that is just some weird thing that I wanted to do. So it's just, I did it for the fun, honestly, like for the experience of it. And so assignments and stuff also, lot of the classes that I took, my other friends were also in it. So we probably did a good way of distributing work, saying that, hey, I'll take over this assignment. In a group project, you can maybe take care of this. So that kind of communication. And job hunting, like I feel once you have like a solid resume and you decide that, hey, I want to offer.
Was there a goal ki I am going to spend X hours in job hunting, or I'm going to do 5 applications for sure today?
I tried to do that, but I feel like it's just, at least for me, my strategy kept changing. It kept changing a lot, right? Initially, I was like, I took LinkedIn Premium, send cold LinkedIn messages to people. And then I started to also talk to a lot of people in that field, uh, not not directly like in product or project management, or but people like whom I knew, trying to understand how I could learn those skills. There's a lot of trial and error. In fact, I even did this where for few companies, sometimes you can attach any work samples or proof of concepts, right? For some companies, I actually sat down and made project teardowns and did it. It didn't help, not even once, but these are all the trial and error methods. So maybe some days my goals are like, I'll just apply to 100 jobs, put in 100 job applications a week or something. But some days I was like, no, I'll do it more strategy wise, because even I didn't know what works out back then. Maybe now I kind of have figured out what works out for me, and I'll like
So what
plan
is
accordingly.
it that you will do for your full time?
So for me right now, I feel like more than concentrating on random cold messages to get an opportunity from there, I'll do cold messages to understand the kind of work that they're doing in the kind of roles that they have and how they reach there. So this is more of like a long term
This is
career
learning
asset.
resources.
Yeah. So that is how I'll utilize cold messaging. And in terms of applying, I'll, yes, definitely sit and curate and revisit my resume, but more in the way of, again, not trying to customize it for every job, but trying to customize it for a job that ideally I would want to do. Because I don't think a lot of times companies are looking for the exact skills or the exact domain, but it's either one of them, and it's usually like transferable skills. And it's physically not possible to change your resume for everything. So even if you wanted to do that, it's not going to work out. So that's definitely something that I'll do. And I think also focus in areas of expertise and not just randomly apply to jobs, because that will reduce the quality of the time you put into other ways of job hunting.
Okay. What was the interview process? So you started getting calls. What is the interview process for these? Same for all the companies or different?
No. So all my interviews were different in terms of like length and how difficult they were and stuff. But I'll start off in the order of the offers that I got. First, AMD was a recruiter phone call where she says that, hey, this is something that we liked you. Are you interested in it? What is the timeline you're looking for, etc. And the interview in itself was, I think, for 1 hour, if I remember correctly. And we for AMD, because it's a semiconductor company, we also went over a few of technical concepts of my understanding in computer engineering. And they also went over, like I mentioned, right, at Cisco, I did certain amount of planning for NPI validations. How did I do that? And he went on to ask, saying that, hey, if we have such a kind of situation, what is something that you navigated? So there I made it a point to explain in granular detail of what I did there, because I know the reason they picked me was specifically for that expertise. So that's how it was. And it was just that I had an interview with my hiring manager, and the next was getting the offer. So that was, I would say, pretty straightforward, and maybe my easiest interviews out of the three. And next was Confluent. Confluent was the toughest interview that I have given. And I think, I don't know, from undergrad, I would have given like, I don't know, 8-10 interviews. This was my toughest one. Because the first step was not an interview. The first step was a take home assignment, and I had to do a project deck of as if I were presenting a program management tech for stakeholder buy-in.
Oh, interesting.
And I also had to do a status report of hey, if you were to present it, middle of the release, end of the release, and you would kind of
So
like,
they gave you like a case study.
exactly. And so that, I think I chose to do it in the field of expertise. So I was at Cisco working with switches and routers. So that's the field that I chose to do. And it was, I don't know if it was a coincidence, that the person who was interviewing me was also from a networking background. So it wasn't like when I was presenting my deck, he in fact also pointed out, hey, what does this feature mean? Because it's not like I just put in some technical bogus there. I have to justify what I've put in there. So it wasn't like a high level project where you have just put in some kind of project management deck. It was like a real deal, as if you are executing this project, and what are the potential things that can go wrong, what is the headcount that you're giving, so that full deal. So here I think I took a help from a lot of people in understanding what was supposed to be done, and also like of course executing it. And because they like that, they called me for a 45-minute interview. And by the way, this entire process was spanning over a month. So I got my call back sometime around Thanksgiving, and my first interview was sometime in December. And in December, I gave the 45-minute interview, which was presenting the deck like I would in a stakeholder meeting. I had to tell them that, hey, these are the risks that we have. And the questions that I was asked was also that, hey, do you think is this something that we can push for next quarter? Is this something? So it was like,
they were like really mimicking
yeah,
scenarios
exactly,
as if it would happen.
Yeah. So that was a very unique interview experience. And at that point, I think I had to, like I said, know what I'm talking about, because that person was from networking background, which I was surprised, because there are only a handful of networking companies. So that was that. And then my second round was scheduled, and this round was scheduled for 45 minutes, but the interview went on for an hour and a half. And this interview was like a lot of grilling down into situational program management questions. Like, say if he asked me a question, he'd stop me and he'd dig deeper into that. He'd stop me and he'd dig deeper into that. So it's just a lot of like... An
example would be like, okay, you're working on this release and a roadblock happened.
Yeah.
How would you communicate to stakeholders? And
Yeah.
then you would try to do
exactly.
that. And but what if this?
Yeah, exactly. So, but what if this happened? I don't think like it was a very like I didn't expect that, because usually you think it's question answer. But this was like a very deep dive, digging in. But I mean, he also made me like very comfortable. I was very comfortable in the interview. And actually, fun fact, if people like they're prepping for product management interviews, this interviewer was actually one of the panel interviewees for for Exponent, for one of the Exponent videos. And I like recognized him. In the end, I asked him, did you do this thing? But so yeah, you can, I mean, of course, expect the quality of the interview to be top notch. He was a So that was that. And then the third round of interview was with the like sister teams, trying to understand how I would coordinate with, say, engineering teams or product teams, and from their perspective, how they thought I was a candidate. This again was for 30 or 45 minutes, I don't remember, but that was that. And then the best interview round, which is the recruiter call, where I am happy, they are happy, and
they're giving you money.
and just oh god, yeah. And so the entire end-to-end process was over a month. I'm saying starting from when I the project deck, it was I think 1.5 months. So I think for me, like I think I was
like
I think I was like finally. And actually all three offers had a very crazy like time of getting the offer. Like for AMD, I received my offer less than 48 hours before I was flying to India. So I literally slept in a puffer jacket that day, because I packed and shipped my things. And I was not going to come back to this house. I was going to, and I didn't plan that. In less than 48 hours, everything changed.
Yeah.
And for Confluent, I got my call back in India. So I was like able to enjoy my India trip nicely. And Tesla call back I got while I was on a road trip. So it's just, uh, it was a different memory for each and every one. So that was, yeah, nice.
Did you feel like an imposter syndrome when either maybe starting, because again, you didn't have TPM experience or
Yeah.
PM experience. You're now going to work as one,
Yeah,
especially with people who have worked with multiple TPMs.
exactly. Yeah.
So like, did you feel like, oh my gosh, like what if I don't perform?
So I feel at the job I didn't, because you're the only intern in the team, right? They look at you as an intern. But the imposter syndrome really hit while prepping for the interviews and when you're applying. Especially, actually, this funny thing this happened for Confluent is, like I said, right, there were very few people that I would talk to about career and stuff. So I was actually telling this senior, she was, I think, probably one of the first people I told about the callback, saying that, hey, you know what I got? She's like, oh, is it a take-home assignment? I'm like, yeah, how did you know? And she was like, actually, somebody else also, somebody from your batch itself, I won't tell who, but they had reached out to me because they got a callback as well. And I was like, oh, someone from my cohort itself reached out, and I don't know who it is.
Yeah.
And you just,
so now there's a competitive brain
where
on.
it's just, and I already know how people in Purdue MEM are. They're all very smart, and that's just somebody from Purdue. So how many other people will be there apart from me? Am I going to do better than them? What if they have like 5 years of product experience? Like, it's just all those 100 questions. And I remember for that particular interview, like I had this bag of, I think, 65 dumplings or something. And that's all I ate for the entire week, because I was like, I don't even want to waste time cooking. So
and how did, so the overcoming the imposter syndrome was working extremely hard on this craft.
Working hard, breaking down, and then
breaking down matlab Rona.
I used to cry, and I was usually not.
But crying as in like, what was the reason?
No reason. I used to cry because, like, oh God, what if I don't get it? I feel like I'm, like, all that stuff used to happen because I had so much pressure of, like, oh, I had to crack it. It was all self-imposed pressure. And then I talk to friends, and friends would be like,
chill.
Yeah, so back and forth. And then I'm like, I don't have to waste my time. I won't waste time cooking, and that's why I'll eat frozen food for the rest of the week and all that nonsense. And I think through this process, in between, somewhere, like, we had gone on some trip also. And in the trip, in after 6 p.m, I said, I'm not going to chill. And, like, I think my friends also had a tough time with me, because I kind of was like maybe being a spoiled sport a lot of times, because I was just like,
but your hard work paid off.
Yeah.
That's amazing. If an incoming student planning to come in maybe next fall, they're starting their journey at Purdue MEM, or just they're starting their journey wanting to become product tech space, how would you structure their journey? How, like, what is the advice would you give? Like, if they were your younger sibling, like, okay, Samhita, I'm coming, tell me, what should I do? What would you like? What's the roadmap would you give them?
See, first thing is prepare as much as you can in India. The earlier
in India, before coming.
Prepare in a sense, not like hard preparing for interviews or anything, but mentally preparing in terms of what is it that this, at least I would say, even something like choosing which stream you want to pursue your master's,
which industry, which domain.
That is also in a way preparation. So the more clarity you come with, the better it is for you, the better it is for you to navigate amongst these
so you're
situations.
not lost when you are like, and then you're chasing what everyone else is doing because you didn't have clarity in first place. Okay.
So, because more often than not, that happens, right? You're looking at people, and that's kind of the first thought that comes. So, it's maybe that will happen, but it's about how quickly you come back onto your track. So that's definitely the first advice. Second, everybody will give this advice, but I feel like it doesn't happen, is maybe take a chill. Opportunities will of course eventually come to you, but definitely I think my strongest advice is also believe that there's a good amount of luck that plays into it. It's not
But
always
how
hard
come
work.
the luck happens to Purdue MEM? So that,
So like that's what I'm saying, right? So like it might, like, so when we talk, we're like, okay, you know what, I worked this hard, that hard, uh for things to fall in place. But there are actually so many things that could have gone wrong. Something as simple as, you know, you didn't fall sick on the day of the interview, or something as simple as that. Like in this market anything can happen. So uh I guess the point I'm trying to make is that let's assume something didn't come to you. Say if you didn't land an internship also, don't directly map it to the lack of skills that you have, but probably map it to saying that, hey, you know what, it was bad luck.
your
This was
time
not
will come.
yeah,
Apna
your
time
time,
aayega.
apna time aayega. Because I mean, because what happens is initially I started mapping it to myself, thinking I'm not capable enough. Thing is, it doesn't help. So whether if that's the reason or luck is the reason, it's just if you
Self-sabotaging is what
yeah,
you're saying, like
yeah,
happens a lot.
exactly.
So protect yourself.
Yeah, yeah. And I would say, like, speak mostly to people, A, whose journeys you see yourself in the future and who are from similar backgrounds. In a simple intention is to not confuse yourself too much, right? Because even within the similar journey and similar fields, there are so many lines of opportunities, right? Like just in computer science itself, there are so many fields. In each field, in machine learning itself, there are so many subfields. So there are a lot of opportunities. So probably like try to learn from journeys that you intend to be like, more in terms of the expertise side, not just like aspirational, hey, I think what this person's doing cool, but actually like more like, hey, I think this person's journey has relevance to mine.
Love it. Okay, let's talk about money because it's important. So you had 3 internships. So you've been almost working for a 11-ish month.
Yes.
So what is like typical salary range people make?
So for internships or
Internships.
so it varies like from state to state. It varies from like industry to industry, but I would say
Give me range.
like a good number that, hey, you're doing well in Austin, in Texas area, would be like 40 plus
Per hour.
per hour, and is like, you know, you're in a good place. And I think maybe it's tech companies that pay, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And 45 plus is good. 50 plus I've heard very very few people, but that's kind of the range.
So like anywhere from 35 to 55-ish K beach mein you can make. Okay.
And in California, I would say that honestly, like even at least 45 plus.
Yeah.
But again, I think
I've heard people making $55, $60 per hour.
Yeah. So actually, California core tech roles for engineering, I think they pay at least 50. For TPMs, probably again, industry wise also depends, but for maybe tech again in California will definitely mostly pay above 50.
Yeah.
But other domains, I would say I think 45 is a decent start. Most places will definitely pay 40 plus, or maybe I can't say definitely, but at least aim for 40 plus.
And again, it depends on city areas. Like if
Definitely.
you're working in Kansas,
Yeah.
you're probably not going to get to 45.
Yeah.
You'll probably get like
This I was
35.
saying just for California.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and then this is 40 hours per week
Yes.
kind of thing.
Yes.
So I'm sure people are doing the math is like, oh wow, like it's like $1,600 and $8,000 a month. And that's like 11 months, $88,000.
No, don't forget taxes.
Yeah, of course. There's taxes and all of it. The question, and then what is Purdue's fees?
Purdue's
Roughly?
Roughly, I think somewhere between $43,000 to $50,000 to $45,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then would you say that you're like ROI positive? Like now you're gonna pay off, you are not gonna have any debt.
Yeah, I mean, like major part, yeah.
Yeah.
I would say that, yeah.
Nice. How is that feeling that you're gonna graduate and you won't have to like
Yeah.
you're not like having $50,000 debt in your head?
Yeah. I think honestly, like I'll be honest that for me also I was a little bit more comfortable. Like I didn't have to, even in the first time when I didn't have money, my parents were like very fortunate, don't stinge on anything. So I was fortunate at that standpoint. But even otherwise also I feel for me, the major like sigh relief factor comes from that how you can live a more comfortable life, right? Either in terms of traveling or saying eating out with friends.
But also like stress-wise, mental.
Stress,
like now
mental
you will have
stress.
more
Yeah,
confidence.
yeah,
कि
exactly.
भाई, okay,
Definitely.
now I can apply with more confidence.
Yeah. And also, my main also it's just mentally you have a goal set for yourself, because when I was coming from India, from the year before and even now, the only thing, the dialogue that you hear is market is bad, but maybe by the time you graduate it will pick up. But that nobody can say. So mentally in India, when you're leaving a decent company with a good pay, or a good company with a good pay, so when you're leaving these kind of opportunities and coming here, you kind of don't want to be in a situation where like you're regretting your decisions, right? So that's the main
like
thing.
You were making 20, 25, 30 lakhs per annum over in India, and then you left here, and now
you shouldn't feel that I shouldn't have done that. Also, it's just the only thing is like, say, even if for whatever reason, say if I decide to go back to India, I don't want to go back with like, even say down the line, I don't want to go back with a regret that I shouldn't have come to the US. So that for me, mainly that regret is definitely not there. There are a lot of opportunities that I've gotten to experience, and I think I was in the same company for 2 years, and in just 1 year I got to work in 3 different. So that in itself is definitely an experience, and definitely the money also, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you're earning in rupees and spending in dollars, that's a different pain. So it's just living has definitely been a lot more comfortable.
Yeah. People are asking me, and I would ask you, if they don't have any work experience back in India, should they come to United States in this job market?
So if you're somebody, the answer is yes and no. Yes, if you're one of those students, like I've had friends who on day zero of engineering knew exactly the field that they wanted to do. Somebody would have all their internships in machine learning. One of my friend, all their relevant work experience in big data or systems. So they were very strategized since day one. But if you're that kind of a person who's so passionate about what you do and you know what you're doing, definitely you are a very smart person, you're going to do great. But if you're one of those people saying that I'm not getting a job here, and this thing that, I'm studying here, I'll study there, finish it off all at once, and all the silly reasons. If you think US is the easy way out, definitely come with some work experience, because end of the day, it's for you to understand how corporate works, as simple as that. Second is for you to have something vouching against you, right? So even actually, you can argue saying that there are so many people who come without job experience. Yes, I know. But the people who are doing well without job experience, if you actually look at them, they would have done so much relevant work just in their 4 years of engineering. Honestly, I don't think I did that much relevant work in 4 years of my engineering. But actually, some people with 0 years work experience, they did so many internships just in 4 years, because they knew outright young when what they wanted to do.
They were brought up in that environment. They had that circle, etc.
And so if you are somebody who's coming because you've actually gained years of experience without having formal work experience, then definitely. But if you're somebody coming, again, all these reasons, because I haven't found a job, I'll go there, figure it out, It's
you're gonna have a hard time.
yeah, because you're not just, if you're thinking your biggest competition is people with work experience, it's also people without work experience who are very, very smart. So it's, don't make things tougher for yourself. Whatever you're finding tough in India, it's going to only be harder than that here. Yeah.
Love it. Awesome. I feel like I have gotten full end-to-end journey. I am excited for your next future.
Yeah.
Samhita, thank you so much for sharing your journey and being so kind. I am excited for you to get full-time, and then once you get it, I'll bring you back again and we'll do more detailed podcast. But I love your honesty and even opening up to areas which people don't often talk about. So again, super excited for your journey. Can't wait to bring you back. But until our next one.
Keep smiling and keep hustling.
Nice.